Okay, so you guys want to start by looking at, let's start by just looking at those winds aloft that you're talking about, okay? Let's see, so
that was on Wednesday.
it was week 7, day 2, I believe.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Okay. So there's the winds aloft that I posted. This is for the San Diego to Salt Lake flight, if you've been working on that one.
Wait. Should I pull the wrong one? Let's see here.
So, other than those of you that know, does anybody notice anything weird about the winds aloft? I think we were planning up in this range, 34, 39,000 feet. What's that?
Left mine at home. My previous for this, I know exactly where they're at too.
Yes, I think I'm not too.
Uh,
San Diego to Salt Lake, right?
yeah.
Cool.
I know I the 39. I think is what I'm flying, so.
Do you want to take one of those sheets to?
So a few of you have emailed or just asked me what the deal is with these winds down here, the ones that start with a 7. Because when you start taking a look at from a circular degree standpoint, you can't actually have winds. I mean, if you think about 360 degrees, right? You can't have winds that would start in the 700 range, right? Since we're making these, if you were to take the first 2 digits and make them, into hundreds like we're supposed to normally, 730 degree winds, doesn't work. So anytime you see a wind report that starts with a 6, a 7, or an 8, okay? 6, 7, or 8. So remember, we're just simply looking at those first 2 digits. So in this case, just the 73. So we're going to look at this one right here on 34,000 feet. So if you were to, like the way we normally do, if you were to take that whole reading and subdivide it, and you would write 7.3 and then put in the middle, 0.2, and then it's negative 43 on the temperature. But as far as those first 2 readings, anytime you see a 6, 7, or an 8, what it means is that the wind speed is over 100 knots. I should tell her that I was using this. So it means that the wind speed is over 100 knots. So this was making sure that she didn't need something anyway. So a 6, 7, or an 8. If you see it start with a 6, 7, or an 8, it means that the wind speed is over 100 knots. So because they can't actually put 3 digits into the 2-digit wind speed when it gets over 100 knots, they have to make it look a little different. So in this case, they did a 7302. But what we end up doing in order to convert this is we take the first 2 numbers and we minus 50 from it. Minus 50. That turns that into a 23. Right? 23 we're fine with. That works. That means 230 degrees. And then for the middle 2 numbers, which is the speed, you just put a 1 in front of it. So in this case, the speed ends up being, or the direction is 230, the speed is 102. And then the temperature negative 43. So nothing changes with the temperature. It's just the direction and the speed. And the only thing that's causing this problem is that the wind speed is 100 or more. And that's what throws the whole thing into this conundrum. Right? So the reason why it's 6, 7, or 8 is because the only numbers you could have from a speed direction wise would be something in the 100s, 200s, or 300s. Now, obviously, if it's below 100, then we don't have the problem. So they actually, you know what? Scratch that. It is 5, 6, 7, or 8. If you see a 5, 6, 7, or 8, because they still do put a 5 even when it's, let's say it's 80 degrees. So that's how you know it's below 100 is you have it. They'll write like 50, 50, or they'll write 5, 2, or whatever it ends up being, 5, 8, any number in there. But when you minus 50, you just get 0, 8 basically. So it'd be 0, 8, 0 on the winds, and then put a 1 in front of the next 2, and then this temperature is the same. So everyone always remembers this rule by just saying minus 50 and add a 1. That's minus 50, add a 1. So if you see a 5, 6, 7, or 8 for your direction, then minus 50 and add a 1 to the speed in front of the 1. So does that make sense? Does that work? Clear as mud? So this one, all of these are 7, so these are pretty easy. So all of these are 230 degrees. But that speed is 102, that speed is 112, this one is 110, 106, 113, 107.
Is that pretty common to see those speeds at 30, 40 miles?
It's common to see them at the high altitudes because that's where you get those really high velocity winds, is up there. So when you get into the winter months, very common because in the winter, the jet streams seem to fall down out of the polar region, and you get a lot heavier winds in the winter, especially winds blowing from the west to the east. So we have a lot of like headwind problems in the winter, like if you have a flight like Chicago to Salt Lake, or if you're doing Milwaukee to Seattle, Portland or St. Louis to Portland, some of these big long routes that we do. In the winter, a lot of those get really heavy headwinds, like 130, 140 knots. So you're thinking, if you're planning on doing a ground speed of, 450 and it ends up being 300 sometimes. A lot of times I'll see some of our planes. You can highlight our planes like when we're looking at them, like on our map at work. You can just put your mouse over the plane and it'll tell you how fast it's going. And sometimes we'll see ground speeds all the way down to 275. You think about that. That is, in a lot of cases, 200 miles per hour slower than, and you think about how much time that adds onto a flight, and imagine how much fuel that adds onto a flight. It becomes very, very significant. So, yeah, I've seen them down in the 270s, 280s, where, geez, it just feels like the plane's not even moving, Anyway. So that is how we convert those with the winds aloft. So 5, 6, 7, or 8, if you see it, minus 50, then add a 1 in front of the speed. It should be good. Any question on that? Good? Okay. Now, as far as the rest of the stuff from last time, specifically, you guys kind of want to see maybe the calculations, like the wind calculations and things like that. Is that kind of what you're wanting to see, or was there a specific part?
I'm just having trouble with basically the whole thing we went over on Saturday. So if we could just
starting from the simplified.
Yeah, starting from simplified.
We're done with simplified. Now we're doing the real thing. Okay.
Yeah, I felt like
Just
it was
one more
just
time,
kind of hard to keep up with where you were storing stuff on like this page that we couldn't see, and you'd be like, oh yeah, so it's this, but I don't remember that you like had that written down right here. So then I would confuse myself by saying, how did you get that?
Okay.
And so if we can just do it like all the way through one more time, I think it was just that we'd only done it once, so now we're just
Okay. Who
stuck.
has anybody worked on the, what was it? Portland, Ontario?
Yes.
Yeah, we started that.
Okay.
We have all the way up through Simplified.
You have that all the way through Simplified? Okay. Let's use that one then as an example.
Now, where is a good question?
Figuring the ice attempts, at Windsor Loft. And you see that.
Yeah. We'll look at all of it. So yeah, so if you're done all the way up through Simplified, let's just quickly kind of compare what you guys have on Simplified Fuel.
Like just this page?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know what the Simplified Fuel was that you came up with. So
I came up.
6,000.
you have 6?
I don't have it with me, but I think it was like around 6. I want to say.
I have 6,500
Yeah, that's
for the
sounds
burn.
about right.
On Simplified.
On Simplified.
6.5, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then,
You have the same?
And
yeah.
the time distance is 3 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds about right, dude. That's pretty close to what I got.
Okay. What did you have on your initial fuel?
Our initial fuel was
No, what did you say? Simplified was?
I think I'm right around 6,000.
12,300.
12.3?
Yeah.
Like that was the total fuel? So minus out your
Yeah.
reserve and stuff out of that. Just go to where it's just the burn. So back 2,500 off of that, and then if you added any contingency or alternate your whole fuel or whatever, just so it's just the 4,000, 3,000,
Let's see.
I've had 19,250 for my original one. It looks like I'm at 7,000 on this Simplified.
Okay.
I think we wrote it on
It'd be like what,
this paper.
9,800? I think.
We wrote it on here.
Oh, we did. That's right.
Yeah. Do you still have those at the house?
I think so. I think they were
Right.
that one.
That's fine. Sounds like,
Well, minus that 2,500 would be 9,800.
okay. So 98,
7,000.
92. Have you guys done it? Did you do it, John?
I don't remember what it was. I don't have it with me.
Did you?
I did it, and my route was not the same as the Windsor Loft, so I think we need to go back.
It doesn't necessarily need to be the same as the Windsor Loft. It's just if it's generally in that direction. The Windsor Loft, and that's the thing. I don't like. I'm not trying to like necessarily show you like, kind of where it should be necessarily, but I'm just trying to just pick ones that are kind of what would be what could be several routes in that direction.
That was my 10 o'clock walk. I worked until 10, I was like, oh,
Okay.
this ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I just remember it being pretty much tailwind all the way.
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you what.
Oh, we got a headwind.
Like you did? Oh, maybe that's right.
That was like a headwind crosswind.
That's right. That's right.
So I'll tell you what we got.
How was it?
Thing.
Hardest test you've ever taken?
Okay, so the route that I got on this, I'm going to move this over here. That's the route that I ended up using. Would have been Portland. So there wasn't a SID that really worked. Okay. So I ended up just going straight to Battleground VOR.
That's what we did.
And then catching the J67 down to Lakeview. and then from Lakeview onto the J5 down to the Shafter VOR, which is the EHF, and then EHF was the transition
The Ziggy 6.
to the Ziggy 6 into Ontario.
That's what we have too, but I think ours is a little bit longer.
Yeah, we had.
I had
You
that
had
too, but I
the-
used Portland 1.
I did too,
Sit.
and then I picked Eugene.
Yeah, that. So if you remember the Portland one is a radar vector only,
Yeah, I noticed, like, looking at the map, there was just, like, stuff.
just dots.
Yeah, everywhere. So I didn't know.
So not a big deal though. I mean, not in a way that's kind of what we're still doing because we're just going direct to the battleground VOR. So really the idea is when you don't have a SID to use, just go directly from the airport to the VOR, which has jet routes that you can use. You know what I'm saying?
So we wouldn't jump onto a Victor route to get to the next or the closest VOR?
If it helps, you can do it that way.
Like if you did Portland straight down to Eugene, there's a Victor route.
Yeah, you could do that. You could just go, but the question is though, is where does the Victor route begin? Because where did you get onto the Victor route? Because you got to still go to a VOR. So you just went Portland direct to Eugene.
J189 now.
Yeah, we went from Battleground to J189, and then T1.
Just zoom out. Okay. So if I'm here, and this is the high chart, I'm looking at Portland. It's right here, this green dot. So if, let's say I don't have a route in there, I'll just go ahead and clear this out for right now. I'm just looking at that. What I want you to look at when you're seeing this is just, okay, what's the closest VOR to Portland that has jet routes I can use? That's all I really want you to do. And in this case, you do have to go a little tiny bit north to get to it, but it's still probably less. It's probably like only 5 or 6 miles. It's still probably less out of the way than, say, going somewhere off, a different direction. So that's kind of what my thinking was when I did the route, is just Portland direct to this VOR. And then from there, I have all of these different jet routes. I've got the J1, I've got J1, J189, J67, J159, all 4 of these that kind of start going south. So for me, yeah, I picked J67. So when I plugged it in like this, the direct route. Oh wait, why did I pick Seattle? Those two. There. Okay. So when I plug it in as direct, this is kind of what I was basing off why I used J67. So when you start looking at it, so it splits J189 and J67 right here, but the question is really at that point is when you start coming down here, as you start getting separation, you can see how it's staying over here a little bit more. So, and then the other only question is once you get to J189, I looked at J189 going to Klamath, but then I noticed that my options were, I knew that I needed to get to the Shafter VOR for my transition. That was the big driving factor in my route. So from here, I couldn't really get to the Shafter VOR all that easy because I started looking at, well, maybe I can follow J189 straight down.
That's what we did until we got to.
But it goes
LMT.
to Linden. Oops. Okay, so it goes to Linden. So the problem is that I needed to get to, I'll say that's Linden over there. So ultimately I'm trying to get to this VOR. So if you go to Linden and then you still stay J189, you end up getting to the Avenal VOR, but you don't have any way of connecting over to Shafter unless you did a Victor route.
Oh,
If there's a Victor route.
We did J92 from there though.
From which one?
From LMT. Once we got there.
Okay. So the J92 it goes off this way over to Mustang, and then you hit J5.
J4. FMG and then J5.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mustang is FMG, and then J5 to Shafter. Okay. So let's just take a look at so J189 to LMT,
J92.
J92 to FMG, to J5 to EHF, and then Ziggy 6. So 797.5.
What was the other one?
Mine was 792.1. Insignificant, honestly.
Well, would that make a big difference on
No,
our
it
test or
doesn't.
anything as long as we got there?
Oh no, yeah, no.
Like it's
yeah.
not you have to go the quickest
not
route.
Not at all. No. Yeah, I don't. That's to me that's insignificant. I mean, that's pretty much the same. Like 5 miles is honestly it's insignificant. Like I was saying, so that route works just fine. Yeah, when I initially did mine, I'm not on a mission to see who can do the shortest route, but if you've got one that is significantly longer than the rest, that's probably a little bit of a red flag. You do want to try and get the most economical route, but when you're talking a difference of 5-10 miles, I mean that's not going to be anything really. You're talking that's like an extra minute. So.
We don't have enough for everybody, but there's I'll have to grab one.
Those are Keenan's favorite.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Anyway, so so depending on which what your fuel would have probably been pretty similar. Did anybody have a different route than either of those two that we just talked about?
I haven't done this one yet, but would you mind looking at the one going out of Lubbock really quick?
Uh-huh.
I just am curious if anyone did what I did.
Has anybody done Lubbock to?
3 times.
Yeah.
How many emails did you have on that one?
Actually, I don't
Was that
think that
Thursdays?
other than just
last day.
I think you're the only one that emailed me on it.
Yeah, we're trying. And that one I not worked past my simplified fuel, and then we went into class on Saturday. And I knew after class on Saturday, because no one else had done the Lubbock, I think I'll be alright if I was on that one. It drove me bananas. That was last Thursday.
Hey.
You don't want to see it.
Oh, it's open? Is that open?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lubbock. Okay, so just starting off how we routed it, or?
Yeah, I don't have my plan in front of me, I'm sorry. But I remember I did B14 to the closest VOR, wherever that is. Do you have that? B14, CME, J15, Because it goes, the Victor route goes right out of Lubbock over to that VOR. Yes. Yep. Is that what you did too?
I did CME, and I heard Chantel say J15.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did CNX.
Yes.
Well,
you had CNX.
No, we did CQ, but that's later down the road. We did Albuquerque. I didn't know if I could go straight to Albuquerque. That's right. I was
Yeah, we just decided
I don't know if I need to list it and then go back out on that J route if I go through it. But then I did Albuquerque too after CNX.
But I just wanted to make sure that that's the right thing to do, because it kind of takes you a little south and then you go up to Albuquerque rather than just going direct to Albuquerque, because there's no SIDS out of Lubbock.
My pilot friend made me redo it. He saw he can knock it out he can make it shorter.
He did say that you could?
Yeah. This was my final route, yeah. but I like reworked it like 3 times.
He's like, no,
But he's like,
we're not
no.
doing
Say
that.
not to drop it down and then go back up.
Well, how I had it, he's like, you need to, I had it coming across even past Albuquerque, I think once more in 2 weeks. Yeah, the first time I went all the way across to Phoenix, I think.
Okay,
So I've redone it like a few times.
so basically you started with a Victor route from Lubbock and then over to Chisholm?
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, jet routes, basically, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's
Then
fine.
I do hit one Victor out at the end because,
Can we go that far? No.
Not being on anything? Well, from Lubbock, if you're going airport,
I guess step out, just a minute, I apologize.
that's fine. From Lubbock, I mean, Lubbock has a bunch of Victor routes that connect to it. So you could go this way, that way. I mean, by taking these Victor routes all the way to like this, just kicked me off again.
Yeah, so I reworked it a lot. And to help on my fuel issue.
and that was another question I had also while you're doing this. If we're all coming up with different routes, how are we sure that the winds aloft are like where we need them to be?
But the thing is the winds aloft, they generally cover a pretty broad area.
Okay.
Like even when we are getting, like even if you have like, even when I was looking at this one, picking the winds aloft, like I tried to space them kind of like zigzagged, you know, so that if you were to the south, it would still work, or if you were to the north or whatever, you know. So just, yeah, that's, the winds aloft will be similar regardless, but.
Okay.
This is Jaden.
Hi. How was your trip?
Crazy.
That's,
Yeah.
How long is it? How long is it?
It's like, it took me 4 hours.
That's not a bad
I've
drive.
done it
Gorgeous.
probably 20 times. I hate that drive.
That's
So
it?
boring.
I didn't think it was that long.
Yeah,
It's
I've
like
done
about 5
it 10
minutes
times
drive.
then, yeah, have you?
This is my first time here.
Oh,
In
yeah.
all my years of school, this is my first time in St. George.
Are you going to do a headquarters tour?
I want to.
Tomorrow we'll show you around.
Let's see. I'm trying to get this thing to reconnect to the TV.
So I guess the point of the question is, if you can get onto Victor routes to get to a VOR, should you do that instead of going to a more direct VOR without a Victor route?
So sorry, say that one more time. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this.
From the airport, should you use a Victor route to get to a VOR that's a little out of the way, or should you go more direct to a more direct VOR without a Victor route or any route, or like airway?
If you can go direct, if you can use a Victor route, that would be better.
Okay.
So, but the thing is about this, if you're not using a SID, no matter what, regardless of whether you're using a Victor route or a jet route, you're just simply from the fact that you're not using a SID means you do have to go from the airport direct to a VOR, even if it means connecting to a Victor or a jet route. So if you have one like in the case of Lubbock, I mean, Lubbock is a low VOR, so it has the Victor routes connected to it. So that works great in this plan to do that. In the case of the Portland, Ontario one, Battleground is the closest VOR to Portland, regardless of whether it's jet routes or Victor routes anyway. So in that case, that one works even better because it actually has jet routes. So, so yeah, really that's, you know, if you can connect to a close VOR, like Lubbock's going to be a little bit different because it's a smaller airport and it probably only does have the Victor routes connected to it, but that works perfect in this case. So. I'm going to have to restart this thing. Hold on.